Greetings. By virtue of your presence watching this video today, I want you to know that we consider you to be an extended member of our family at Unity in Lynnwood. We believe that you are an individualized expression of that one creative impetus which stands behind all life, and as such we celebrate the uniqueness which you are, and we celebrate our unity with you. We are glad you're with us.
Wasn't I cute? You don't think that was me? I don't think so either. What was amazing, if you could only be up here, because as soon as I stood up here, I see everybody go. I mean, it was awesome. I just thought, wow, has somebody descended? I was reminded this morning of a story of a Buddhist monk who was at a social event. Everything's going along fine, and all of a sudden he starts weeping. Really weeping. And nobody knew quite what to make of it, and when he kind of stopped, they asked him, what are you weeping about? He said, there's so much sadness in the world. There's so many people who are hurting. How could I not weep? And the social event went on for a while, and all of a sudden, he's sitting there and he starts laughing. And he's howling. And people are trying to figure out, what is he laughing at? And he finally stops and they say to him, why'd you laugh? And he said, there's so much happiness in the world. There's so much joy in the world. How could I not laugh? And that is so the world we live in. The world of great joy and the world of suffering. I feel we are so privileged here. I mean, to be in this community, a welcoming, open-hearted community, about as peaceful as any community I've been associated with. In the Pacific Northwest, with the weather we have now. But it's not like this in other parts of our country. There are people who are really suffering. And in many ways it's going to get worse. The city of Houston is underwater. And that's a big deal. And I always wonder, other than feeling it, what do we do? How can we help? And I have two things to say about that. One is to orient ourselves in the world so that no matter where we are or when we are with the question, how can I make things better here? If we're at home, if we're at work, if we're with our friends, if we're with our partners, how can I make things better here? That's not the normal question that we go along asking, because normally we're comparing ourselves. Normally we're trying, we're pushing, we're up against some ideal we have of how we're supposed to be or what we're supposed to do. How can I make things better here? So that wherever we happen to be planted, that's the question that we walk into our day. And the other thing is to honor that space behind the great joys and the great sorrows, to honor that space that's behind the suffering and behind the celebrating. That space of spirit that embraces them both. You know it. That space behind your eyes. That space that's not a denial, not a repression, not a suppression of either the joy or the sorrow. But it's an embrace of both. With the question, how can I make things better here? Because the universe will respond to us when we ask that question. We will discover how we can make things better. But that's not what I was going to talk about this morning. But that, I guess, is what a rabbi's doing here. Incidentally, Jewish rabbi is kind of too many words. Because there aren't any other kinds of rabbis. There are other kinds of Jews, but I don't know any rabbis who aren't Jewish. That might even be a requirement. Yeah. It's okay. You just said it twice. I don't. People always do that. Emphasis. It's just, I always... It used to be that when I spoke at a Unity church, people would be shocked. You know, when I started speaking at Unity of Bellevue, it's like people would come and suddenly they'd find a rabbi in the church. And over the years, people aren't shocked anymore. You know, so there's a sense that I have that I'm no longer a stranger in these here parts. And something has happened at Unity in Lynnwood, for me and for us, that is different from all the times I've been associated with Unity and Centers for Spiritual Living. Because I've never been a congregant before. And lo and behold, we find ourselves comfortable being nourished here, as well as having the opportunity to teach. And it's really extraordinary. I've been known in the past to be the kind of congregant nobody would want to have around. Well, she said, why is that? It's because I'm a cut-up. But with Richard and Matthew, there's just, it's like, wow. I think every church should have a rabbi. I mean, look, Christianity is celebrating, to some extent, the life of this Jewish guy without anybody to tell you what that means. I'm thinking of my sister. We Interfaith Amigos would ask ourselves often, if you're not the religion you are, what religion would you want to be? And for many years, my answer was I would be Buddhist. Buddhist is kind of safe. But in the past several years, my answer has changed. And the answer has become, if I wasn't Jewish, I'd be Christian. And I'd be a minister. I said that on one of the Saturday morning programs, and my sister was listening to the recording. She's in Boston. And she said, if our mom heard that, or our uncle or grandfather, they'd be rolling over in their graves. At which point, when I said that first, somebody said, everybody needs exercise. It was a great line. It was one of those lines I wished I could think of myself. But the reason I'd want to be a Christian minister is because I'd want to do the same thing with the Christian tradition that I do with the Jewish tradition. And that is to utilize the particulars in the service of the universal. Because I think that's what the whole thing's about. It seems to me that the whole reason for different traditions is to support different people at different times in awakening to that which is shared. And in this time of incredible polarization, what happens is a siloing of religion. So that, yes, we say these things, but we each have our separate houses, we each have our separate institutions. And with separate houses and separate institutions, what we're really playing to is our particularities and not our universality. And when we play to our particularity, there's no way of not doing a comparative trip. And in one way or another saying, my particularity is better than your particularity. And if we really awaken to the universality that we are apparently, supposedly working on, supporting, we can't say my universal is better than your universal. You know what I mean? What's a universal anyways? So my task, and basically in my whole career, is how do the particularities of my tradition help me awaken to the one, help me awaken to the universal? And that, I think, is the wisdom that needs to be uncovered, recovered, celebrated in all the institutions. But the separate institutions, I think, are contributing to the polarization that we experience in our country and in our world. And we can't say we'd like to share separately. If we are to live in a pluralistic culture which really welcomes the particularities, particularly in the service of something that we share, then that has to be modeled. And we don't have a model for that. And that's really why I'm here. Because I think what's starting to unfold at this rather interesting place called Unity in Lynnwood is the emergence of a model. Like, what would it be like if the place has spiritual director, but soon he's going to be minister officially, and a rabbi, and a priest, well, 2 priests. I mean, what would that look like? Not to do comparative religion. Comparative religion is terrible because that's like, which is better, which is best. No. but to do a supportive. How does my tradition support an awakening for everyone? How does your tradition support an awakening for everyone? Tell me how it does that. I want to know how mine does it, and I want to be able to express it, because that's what it's about. If everything I'm about is building up my own institution, we're lost. We're just lost. But if somehow an institution can model that pluralism, if somehow an institution can model streams of spiritual wisdom that are converging and supporting each other, well, that seems to me to be the way. That's why I'd want to be a Christian minister if I was a Christian. And that's why I want to be a rabbi. And it's an interesting path. I became unemployable as a rabbi in the early 1970s. Because I set out on a spiritual path that was very different from what was being needed to head synagogues. So in Los Angeles in 1978, I founded a synagogue where we could meditate and where we could talk about Judaism as a spiritual path. And in an interesting way, among other things, it had the highest percentage of non-Jews as members of any synagogue in the country. Because that was always the path. There's something bigger going on. And I want to play that game. When we came to Seattle, we came with no visible means of support. And we started a community here. And once again, the same thing was true in terms of membership. But even though I was housed then at Unity in Bellevue, there was never a kind of I was never a part of that community. And something different happens here. I don't know why. It's just great. And that's why I'm here. And I get to share some of the gifts of my tradition. So once a month we do a spiritual Shabbat. Shabbat is the Hebrew word for Sabbath. Sabbath is actually a transliteration of the Hebrew because there wasn't such a phenomenon before the Jewish Sabbath, Shabbat. So once a month we do that on a Saturday morning. Not so early, not till 11. And in September, we're going to do, for the 6th year, we're doing high holidays here. All the other years, we did it by renting the facility, and we did our thing, which has been wonderful. This year, we're entering into a different kind of relationship with Unity in Lynnwood, and actually everything's being sponsored by this place. We still need to charge because there's nothing in the budget yet, but for the first time we're opening the invitation for people to attend who are members of Unity. The high holidays are like Christmas and Easter wrapped up into a 10-day period. It's the essence. I mean, after all, Jesus celebrated the high holidays. I mean, the guy was Jewish. But people don't usually think about this. What are the implications of that? He was an observant Jew. In fact, I learned recently that Jesus never celebrated Christmas. I don't think it's accidental that he came out of that tradition. I don't think that's incidental to what he taught and what he did. And I think it's important. And in some ways it seems to me that this is an opportunity to reclaim that part of his teaching and that part of his ministry. Not because I'm Christian, but because I know a lot of what he was doing and what he was saying. So it's a great joy to be able to do that. And that's why I'm here. And I'm here to teach you this morning a Hebrew word. Ahava. I mean, it's just like, we know it. Love is, it's the breath. It's the opening of the breath. Nancy Joy was telling me that when you do it's like the greatest opening for the voice. Ahava. So what I'm going to ask you to do, we're going to do that as a chant. We're going to do it 3.5 times. You want to know why a half time? Because I've learned that when I introduce this, the first time we do it, I'm pretty much by myself. So I'll call that a half. But we're going to tone it, so on a full breath, we'll go Ahava. Okay, ready? And we're going to go from threefold, we're going to chant it 3 times, and then take that into the silence. So that you can just take Ahava and ride it. Let it carry you. Just the sound. So if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. If you want to just stare at me, you could do that. And take a breath. Okay, that was practice. Now. Once more. And take a breath as we bring the Ahava into the outer world. It's like going through your days and finding all the times when you can respond to the moment with and you just know where the leads is to love. And what the expresses is love. Witnessing someone weeping and responding with witnessing someone laughing and responding with holding ourselves, holding each other, holding our country, holding our world in awe. That's what a rabbi is doing in this place. A Jewish rabbi.
Thanks again for joining us. Please visit unityandlynnwood.org for a preview of all upcoming classes, services, and events, and for an opportunity to make a gift to our community should you so choose. Thank you.